welcome back everyone to the P&L IRL podcast. This is your host Luke, and with me as always my co-host Pat.
Hello everybody.
Welcome back. We took a break there for a week. We had, at least for me, dealing with a hurricane. Hurricane Florence was in my neck of the woods. Thankfully, where we are was not severely affected. Though we know that on the coastal areas we saw some serious problems. But again, we just kind of took a break so that we could kind of handle and address that concern for me. And like I said, everything going great after that. But we're happy to be back. We're super excited, and we have a ton to talk about this week. Let's jump right in with what's been going on, what's new in our lives. Obviously, I kind of just mentioned I survived a hurricane. I'm super busy with work, starting some new projects, new activities that we're doing. It's just been a ton on my plate lately, but it's been a lot of fun, and I'm super happy and excited about all that stuff. And also, my birthday is coming up soon, so that's exciting. That'll be fun. But that's pretty much it for me. It's just a lot of work going on. What about you, Pat? What's new for you?
Work is crazy, so it was already busy, and it's only getting busier. So actually, half of my team is now on maternity leave. So I have two people that report to me, and congratulations to one of our team members. She had her baby girl just a few days ago. So she'll be out for several weeks, and we will survive. That's what we're going to do. We also, this past week, I was actually in Chicago for half of it. So left Wednesday, got back Friday, but we went there for a conference, a supply chain and logistics conference. It was a good time. I think it was beneficial. But the second night of it was actually a lot of fun. It was a dinner cruise. Ooh. So that was, provided. Nice. Buffet style dinner cruise. Nice. It was also casino night. Ooh. So they have these tables set up and dealers come in and they give you credit, basically. They give you little cards that you can turn in for chips and learn how to play some games. So it was a lot of fun. Just like The Office, they did a casino night.
That sounds like a great time, man. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yep, it was a good, busy week.
Yeah, hey, sounds like we've both been busy keeping up on things. So let's jump right in then. Let's talk some news. We're going to talk some sports, some entertainment, and obviously some video games. Let's start. We have here the very first thing on our list today. Joaquin Phoenix is the latest iteration of the Joker for that DC movie franchise series. And I'll post a couple links here, especially to the Warner Brothers Pictures Twitter, where you can actually see the video of what Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is going to look like. And I will say, if you were a big fan of the Jared Leto Joker, this is very, very, very different. This is about as far as you can get, in my mind, from the Jared Leto Joker. And it's got me a little excited. So again, I'll post a link to the Twitter, but it's kind of this old school. It goes back and forth between him being a normal guy and then just like this clown face. To me, it kind of harkens back to the older days of the Joker, where he's just this like, insane, but also very sane. Like he knows exactly what he's doing, but he's like just off the rails. But he puts on this facade that he's just like a normal guy. So I'm interested by Joaquin's portrayal of the Joker. I'm interested to see what Warner Brothers does with that. And I'm not one who gets super excited about movies, but Pat, what do you think? I'm thinking cool. I'm kind of hype about Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. What about you?
I'm on the fence. So yeah. I think, Joaquin Phoenix is an incredible actor. He's definitely got the right kind of personality to play the on the fence, crazy yet totally purposeful. Like I think the character, the personality is going to fit really well. But I didn't love the appearance. I'm not totally sure and sold on it. So I didn't like the Jared Leto Joker, but I loved the Heath Ledger Joker. But I kind of wish that DC as a whole would just pick something. I don't even care what it is. Just pick a universe, pick some storylines, and go with it. So one of the reasons Marvel is doing so well is consistency. They've
Mm-hmm.
had similar characters. The same actors are even playing those characters. Whether they like it or not, they make a ton of money to do it. They sign on for long contracts.
Mm-hmm.
They're well planned out. They're well marketed. And all DC is doing is trying to play catch up. And I feel like they just go back and forth on radical ideas that they have and hope one of them sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm hoping this one sticks just so that we don't keep seeing versions and versions and versions of the same character. So I'm 50-50. I think I'll wait for the movie to decide if I really thought it was a good idea or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, like you said, the movie's really going to say it all. You're absolutely right in that regard. But just kind of some interesting news out of the movie realm this week. So then we've also got some big news out of the video game realm, and obviously that would be for us. We talk about Destiny a lot, Destiny 2. The Forsaken DLC has been out. It's been released for 2-3 weeks now.
Yep.
And there is good, there is bad, there is ugly, there is great. So Pat, what are your thoughts? And let's put this in context. We're about 245 light. I think both of us are about or 225. Sorry, I'm 20 levels up. 225 or I'm 525, right? 525.
Oh yeah.
525 is the power we are. It's not even light anymore. I'm switching this all around. Going back to Destiny 1. 525 is where we are. For some of the higher events like the Nightfall Strike, they recommend 540. And for the raid, is that 560 recommended, I think?
So a lot of the stuff is 540.
Yeah.
The raid is recommended at 550.
550.
But the final activities in that are like 580.
Yeah, they're very high level. But so about 520, I feel like you can get to level 500 pretty quick. But after 500, it kind of becomes a bit of a grind to get up to that. Because I've been on that 515, 520 route for, a week and a half or so. But what are your thoughts on the Forsaken so far, Pat? Thoughts on story, thoughts on content? What are we thinking about that?
I think it's actually all around solid. It's overall good. I don't think there's a lot of negative aspects to it. But, it goes back to a lot of the things we've already talked about where we don't love the way Destiny even handles new content. So, there's a lot of things that this game fixed that we didn't like in regular Destiny 2, and they told us to give them some money and they'll make it better, and they did. And I just wish it didn't always have to come down to a game being out for a year. So let me do this big update to fix it that you pay for and another annual pass. And
Yeah.
I just don't love the format of it, but this update and this content is really, really solid. So for those of you who are aware, there's a lot of new bounties. There's a lot of new ways to get new armor, new guns, new activities, a whole new multiplayer / PvE player versus environment game mode and Gambit, which I think is actually a very well executed PvE VP. It's a very interesting game mode. It's very cool.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's back to a real grind.
Mm-hmm.
There's an actual element of grinding to this game, which is something people complained didn't exist. And now that it's here, if you go on Reddit, you see people complaining about it. So you can't make everyone happy. But I do think this is a large step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I think this is a pretty decent quality of life upgrade for Destiny 2. And like you said, though, I'm frustrated that why did this need to be a DLC for this to be this way? Why could we have not gotten this right the first time? The story is fair. They kill off Cade, who was a major character. It's compelling. The cutscenes are very interesting and good. They are the premise is you hunt down some of these aliens. They're called the Forsaken, and they have barons, which are their leaders. And each baron is a little different, so you hunt them down in different ways. While hunting the guy who actually killed Cade, who is the leader of all of them, he's trying to help his queen. This goes back into a little bit earlier in D1, D2 story, so I won't bore you all with that details. Just check out Forsaken if you're interested in it. But I thought the story was good. I thought it could have been done a little better. I think they could have done a little bit more with the Barons. I think you and I were talking about that earlier. Um, but I thought it was good. I think Gambit is a ton of fun, that new game mode you were talking about. I think Crucible's improved. I think the bounties are improved. I think most everything is improved. The one thing I'm saying is the season pass, like you mentioned, is unfortunate to me because the season pass adds new weapons and armor, which I'm just like, why did we not put those in to this DLC? That to me is the cash grab here because it's like I've gotten the same rocket launcher 8 times. Edge Transit. If I get another Edge Transit, I don't know what I'm going to do. So why couldn't we have implemented some of that content into this DLC? I'm just wondering why, because now we've got a season pass, which is paid content on top of a DLC, which was already paid content. So that to me is the ugly of this. But I think overall, it's a great expansion. I mean, it's gotten me back into Destiny again, which is a game I haven't played and Lord knows how long before this. So I mean, quality of life is there. There are short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals you can try to achieve. Long-term goal being like the raid, maybe. Short-term being your quick bounties. Mid-term being maybe that nightfall or maybe your weekly bounty. So I think they balance that out well, but I just don't know why, like you said, why it's taking this route necessarily. But it is what it is, and it's a bit better. Any other final thoughts on that before we move on?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with a couple things. The story, I didn't say anything about it, but I think it was overall better than others have been, for sure. So I think killing Cade off was not something I would have done. I think he was one of the more dynamic and interesting characters, but it's what they did. So it is what it is. We'll move on with our lives.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to be back into it too. So like you said, it got you back into the game. It has gotten me back into the game. So I didn't play a lot. I am also annoyed by the annual pass in the sense that it's already downloaded on my Xbox.
Right.
Like, it clearly is basically already done in there. Not to say they can't tweak it or anything before time, but I mean, it downloaded. It is on my Xbox, ready to go. It's just basically waiting for the day, which is frustrating. And if I really knew for a fact that it was done in there and I just couldn't touch it, I'd be more annoyed. But there's a part of me that hopes it's just the access to it that I downloaded, not the content. So we'll see.
Well, let me tell you something. Our main topic today includes everything you need in the box, but that's later. Okay, so we'll keep you looking forward to that. Just some other news in video games, and then we're going to move into sports. Taletell Games, which is a major game publisher, has announced a major studio closure, according to Kotaku. And I'm going to post not only this Kotaku article, but also their review of Destiny Forsaken, because I think they're both excellent and very well written. But Kotaku reporting that Taletell Games, the makers of games like The Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, and many other games, are laying off essentially all of their company. And according to this quote, it says all but 25 employees were let go from the studio. So it's raising questions. Are there going to be continued Walking Dead games? Are there going to be continued Borderlands games? They did a Borderlands Taletell series that was pretty good. Taletell is known for their story-based narratives and games. It was a lot less actiony and a lot more dialogue-driven. But Taletell Studios essentially closing shop, in my understanding. That's some interesting news out of a major developer.
Yeah, it's always sad to hear about a company that's not doing well, but I mean, if you're not making money, you can't keep going the way you are, and if you don't have any better ideas, then it is what it is. So it's tough to hear, sad to see, but people just clearly aren't going for those story-based games like they would have hoped. The way they did it was that they'd release a game and then sell you additional chapters of that story. So like you mentioned, they did Walking Dead, Borderlands, The Wolf Among Us. I think they also did a Game of Thrones even. So they picked very popular topics. There's certainly not, unheard of weird storylines, but, people just playing Fortnite and Destiny and why get anything else? So it's a struggle. It's sad to see, but when one door closes, another one opens. So we may see something bigger and better come our way from a new studio that all these guys get together and create, because that happens very frequently.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I guess we'll have to see what happens out of that. It'll be interesting to see if those developers go elsewhere, maybe take their talents to other studios, and obviously wish those individuals the best. So let's transition into then some sporting news. So we've got 4 teams in the MLB. We haven't talked much about the MLB, but there are 8 games left in the season, essentially. The Braves, the Astros, the Indians, and the Red Sox have all clinched playoff berths. So they will not likely, they are headed to the playoffs. What's interesting to me is that some teams that are likely going to get left out, Tampa Bay Rays, who are very hot right now, 86 wins and 67 losses, their chances of making the postseason are 0.1 according to ESPN. So a great season for Tampa Bay. Unfortunately, they're not going to get anything out of it. I don't know, Pat, any thoughts on as we get closer to the MLB postseason?
I mean, I love baseball. I always have. I've played it. It's my favorite sport to watch. But the MLB is just boring. There's too many games. It's too tough to follow.
Yeah.
So when I hear about a team that's going to make it or should make it, I don't even know what you're talking about, so I always have to go read it. I just can't keep up.
It's hard. It is hard during the regular season because they play a 162-game season. And it's just like, and you're right. It's like we get hyped for spring training, we get hyped for opening day, and then baseball is there. It's there in the summer, but we don't really jump unless we're diehard fanatics. You said, you love baseball. I love baseball. I coach baseball, but until October, it's and even maybe September with the hunt for October, it's like people just kind of zone it out, and it's like, oh yeah, it's there if we need it, but it's kind of just that buffer till football for the MLB. So it's an interesting question of how to get people, more interested and back into the stands and invested in baseball, I think.
And I think they've done some things to help speed up the games that are working.
The pitch clock.
And they test a lot of things in AAA. There's a timer now on the pitches and stepping out of the box. There's, you can get penalized for that. So I think there's good things going on. Clearly they know they've got to do something, but I don't know. One of the things that'd be best for me is cutting down on the number of games. I can follow 17 weeks of the NFL because there's one game for every team a week, except for the week you have off. Simple. It's also a rougher sport, so there's a difference there.
It's very true. It's very true. I guess we'll see, and we'll talk more baseball as October rolls around, as the playoffs get rolling. Let's move into football then. We have a lot to talk about with football here. And the first thing I want to talk about is, does the NFL need to change its overtime rule? Because in the first 2 weeks of the NFL, we saw 2 ties. The first one shocked us, the Browns versus Steelers. That one just kind of surprised us. The second one, Packers and Vikings, I think some eyebrows started getting raised. And it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Pat, what are your thoughts on ties in the NFL, and does the NFL need to change its overtime rule?
I absolutely think they need to change it. You can't have a tie every week. That's not a normal thing, at least as far as I've ever watched the NFL. I've seen very few ever, and now I've seen 2 in 2 weeks, and I don't like it. It makes stats aren't even set up to show that that tie record. Everything's set up to show 1-1, 2-0, whatever. So now it just looks weird when it says 1-1. But I would be fine if it was a non-contact way to settle a tie. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you put the kickers out there and so you can kick the longest field goal.
There's an interesting way.
Just something to help decide who won. I get it. It's like we mentioned. So the longer you play, the more likely you are to have injuries, concussions, broken legs, all kinds of horrible stuff. But, man, it's going to get real odd when the Steelers don't make the playoffs because they had that one tie.
Oh, yeah, the implications for playoffs. And the Vikings-Packers, too, especially. Both those games were division teams. Packers and Vikings, same division. Browns and Steelers. So you're right. The playoff implications there are huge, or could be huge, for both those, for all four of those teams. I agree. I think we need to change the rules. I think ties are boring. I think the average American, not that there's anything wrong with soccer, but when they think ties, they think soccer. And soccer, for the most part, not as popular as football in this country. And so, for me, what we need to do is we need something. Like you said, it could be non-contact if we're afraid of the injuries. But I'm wondering why we don't adopt maybe more of that collegiate rule where we start the team, coin toss, whatever team calls it gets it. They start at the 25 and they get to try to get in the end zone. And if they don't, then the other team gets a shot and they get to go from the 25 to the end zone. They get a field goal, the other team gets a shot to score a touchdown. They get a touchdown, the other team gets a shot to match it. And you go until you have an answer, because at some point someone's not going to score. Colleges can go into multiple overtimes. That to me makes it exciting. Look, you want to go for the glory, you want to go for the win, go for the win. But in my mind, what I saw in the Steelers with the Steelers and Browns, I saw just a lot of errors. There was just a lot of sloppy football. But with the Packers and Vikings, there were some questionable calls, but also there was a lot of conservative play calling. So it's like, why are we not trying to get this touchdown? What can we do to change these rules so that we don't have more of these ties? Because if we have a tie in this third week of the NFL, I don't know what I'm going to do, Pat.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to more ties. I mean, the college way that you just described is essentially how the NFL used to work.
Yeah.
One team gets the ball, and if they got a touchdown, they won.
Yeah.
If they got a field goal, the other team got a chance to match.
Yeah.
So it limited the number of times you can go back and forth, but at least you had something. I don't know. It's not fun to see teams tie, especially when you watch them play for 3 or 4 hours and then there's no winner.
Yeah.
It's anticlimactic. It's just not exciting. So I think they need to be revisiting it for sure. And if there's another tie this week, it's going to be painfully obvious.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. That's for sure. Let's stay in football. Let's talk fantasy standings real quick. I'm in 5 different leagues, and I think I've won 2 games. So fantasy for me is going rough. I am 0-2 in our current league. That's not to say I haven't put up quite a few points, just both weeks the other team put up more. So I'm struggling in fantasy football this year. How you doing, Pat? How's your fantasy team looking?
I'm in one league, the one you and I are in together. I'm 1-1. And man, you have been unlucky.
I have.
The teams you've played in our league,
they both scored 171 points. Yeah.
All right. It's been nuts. So
what am I supposed to do with that?
Not all your fault.
No.
But, we're also in a small team league.
Yeah.
Only 8 teams, so we have everyone has superstar players in every position, basically.
Yeah.
And if your players are on that week, then your team's going to do really well. But fantasy football to me is something to do.
Yeah.
It's not something I'm real diehard about, but so far I'm doing okay, 1-1.
And speaking of interesting matchups this week in fantasy football, one of us will have another win this week and the other will have another loss. So either I will still not have a win or you will be 2-1 because you and I play each other this week, and I'm looking at the stats right now. I am a 1.1 point favorite, which essentially means absolutely nothing. That is a negligible difference in scores. And we are both projected to score about 130 this week. So, based on our league's rules. So, good luck this week, Pat. And I hope your team doesn't do as well as mine. Hey, everyone, it's Luke, and I'm throwing this in post-production. Just an update to the Fantasy League. Pat did beat me because I sat Drew Brees for some reason and started Kirk Cousins, so Pat gets the win this week, and I remain winless in fantasy. I'll be jumping in and out throughout the podcast. Talk to you later.
Well, one way to find out.
Yes. So, let's talk actual NFL football this week. Let's do some rapid-fire predictions before we jump into our main topic. Here we go. Let's run it down. Number 1, Browns versus the Jets. Oh, wait, that game's already over. The streak is done in Cleveland. Cleveland has finally won a game, and Baker Mayfield leads the Browns to victory. There were celebrations in the street. People were applauding the kicker as he got on the field, as he was making practice field goals before the game. It was just a beautiful sight in Cleveland. And it was also hilarious to the rest of us who were watching it happen. So the Browns victors over the Jets. That was Thursday Night Football. And Baker Mayfield, like I said, coming in after Tyrod Taylor goes out. Sam Darnold for the Jets, struggling, not doing super great. Let's do predictions for the rest of the week. First game, Titans versus Jags. The Jags are a 9-point favorite. For Luke, I say that the Titans have no Mariota and Delaney Walker is done for the year, so I have to vote against my own team here. The Jacksonville Jaguars will beat my Tennessee Titans, unfortunately. What are your thoughts?
The Jags by 12.
Ooh, all right. I'm not naming points on that. I don't want to go that far, but hey, there you go. Next game, Saints Falcons. Falcons are a 2.5 point favorite, so negligible. Division game. I'm going with the Saints because of Drew Brees. He's on my fantasy team, and I trust in Drew Brees.
Where's the game at?
It's
Falcons.
in Atlanta.
All right, Falcons.
Falcons in Atlanta. I like it. Chiefs versus the Niners is the next game. The Chiefs are a 6-point favorite. I'm going with the Chiefs because all hail Lord Mahomes. Pat Mahomes is a beast in the early season. What are your thoughts on that one?
My thoughts, it is irrelevant where that game's at. Pat Mahomes and Kansas City, they're going to throw 18 more touchdowns.
Woo! I mean,
they're
the Niners...
off to a great start. No reason for them to slow down.
Niners defense is kind of banged up, too. Raiders-Dolphins next game. Dolphins a 2-point favorite. I'm going with the Raiders to pick up their first win of the year. And John Gruden to somehow try to find a magical pass rusher that he doesn't seem to understand that are so hard to find, yet he totally traded to the Bears. But I like the Raiders in that game.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Raiders. I don't think they're as bad as their record shows or that they're playing right now. But, yeah, I didn't understand John Gruden's comments either, is that a good pass rusher is hard to find. And I mean, Khalil Mack was great before they traded him. It's not a surprise that he's doing well in Chicago. So very confused.
Yeah, you can find a great pass rusher in Chicago. You traded him there. Next game, Bills versus the Vikings. This is a the highest line this week. 16.5 point favorite for the Vikings. Biggest spread this week. I am going with the Vikings. And at the halftime of this game, the rest of the Buffalo Bills secondary will retire.
I'm definitely going with the Vikings. I don't know if they're going to win by 16. That's a lot in the NFL. I mean, some teams are bad, some teams are great, but let's not forget these are still all freaking professional football players.
True. But Vontae Davis, if you're unfamiliar with that story, Vontae Davis of the Buffalo Bills retired at halftime last week in their game. Literally walked out of the arena. So that was interesting. That's why I say the rest of their secondary retires this week after Kirk Cousins, Stephon Diggs, and Adam Thielen tear them to shreds. Next game, Colts versus the Eagles. The Eagles are a 7-point favorite in Philadelphia. For me, I'm taking the Eagles because Carson Wentz is back. Nick Foles going to the bench. And the Colts head coach was the former offensive coordinator of the Eagles. The Colts' new head coach heads home, and he gets handed an L and heads back to Indy disappointed. Thoughts?
I think the Eagles are going to come in. They're going to win. Andrew Luck and the Colts will hold their own, but they're not going to pull it out.
Next game, we have Packers and Redskins. Packers are a 3-point favorite. I'm going with the Packers because they have Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers is Rodgers. And the Washington Redskins are pretty sad this year. Alex Smith, very, very boring is a good way to describe his season so far.
Well, this game's tough because I don't trust Rodgers right now. He has a knee injury.
He does.
That he's going to play through the pain, and he says it's going to take weeks to heal. Mm-hmm. So there's a good chance he takes one bad hit and he's done. We'll see what happens. I do still think Green Bay wins even if they don't have Rodgers.
Next game, we got the Bengals and the Panthers. Panthers are a 3-point favorite at home. I'm taking the Panthers. The Bengals are off to a hot start, but the hot start is against bad teams. You had the game against the Colts, which the Colts are okay. They're not great. They're not, terrible. They're okay. And the Falcons, the Ravens, who we thought were amazing because they killed Buffalo, and then we realized how bad Buffalo was. So for me, the Bengals, they beat two meh teams. I'm taking Cam Newton and the Panthers.
I'm taking the Panthers. I think the Bengals look much better than they really are.
Yeah, I think so too. Next game, Broncos and Ravens. Ravens a 5.5 point favorite. I'm saying Flacco gets it done against the tough Broncos D, and the Ravens get the W.
Agreed.
I love it. Easy one. Next one, a battle of winless teams. The G-Men, the Giants, versus the Texans. Texans are a 6-point favorite. I am taking the Texans just because both of these teams are bad and someone has to win. And we've realized that Deshaun Watson is human. He is a solid quarterback, but his stats this year much more down to earth than when he started last year before his injury. I'm taking the Texans, though.
I'm taking the Texans. They now have the longest active losing streak in the
do.
NFL. So I think they're going to come back. I think the Giants are pretty terrible. I think they shouldn't be, but I think they are for some reason. And the Texans figure it out.
Next game, we have the Battle of Los Angeles, the Chargers versus the Rams. The Rams are a 7-point favorite. I am taking the team that LA actually wanted to come there, the Rams, because the Chargers are embarrassing and Phillip Rivers has 9 kids. So that's why I'm taking the Rams.
I will take the Rams because of Todd Gurley and my favorite coach in the NFL, Sean McVay.
I surely hope Todd Gurley does well because he's on my fantasy team against you this week. Next game, Bears and the Cardinals. Bears are a 4.5-point favorite. I'm taking the Bears and Khalil Mack because the Cardinals are quite possibly the second worst team in the NFL beside the Buffalo Bills.
Yep, I agree.
Next game, Cowboys and Seahawks. Seahawks somehow in this game to me a surprising 1.5-point favorite. I'm taking the Cowboys because the Seahawks defensive line, or the Seahawks defense, the Legion of Boom, is no longer the Legion of Boom, and their offensive line is about as bad as the Giants. Russell Wilson gets hit a lot, and I think the Cowboys are going to be hungry and get a win.
I think Seattle wins because I need Russell Wilson to have a great game.
I think I need Zeke. Next game, Pats and the Lions. Pats, the Patriots. Pats are a 7-point favorite here. I'm taking the Lions here in an upset. I'm going to say Matt Patricia gets the better of his former head coach Bill Belichick in an upset for Detroit in Detroit.
No, I don't think there's any chance of that. So, Patriots.
And the Monday night game this week, this is a doozy. The Steelers and the Bucks, the Buccaneers. Pittsburgh is a 1.5-point favorite. This is going to be the most fun game of the week in my professional opinion. Yes, in my professional amateur sports opinion. This game could be a doozy with two quarterbacks who love to throw the ball and who have great weapons at wide receiver. Fitz Magic is going off the chain right now. Can he keep it up? I say the answer is no. I'm going with Big Ben and the Steelers to come out on top on Monday night.
I agree it's going to be a great game. I think the Bucks actually come to town and win. Well, not come to town. It's their hometown. But
it is.
I think they pull out the win. I don't think Fitzpatrick is as great as he appears to be. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of it has to do with the scheme. I mean, it's what they're running. The plays are set up for the equipment that they have. So they have a couple wide receivers that are incredible. Mm-hmm. And all Ryan Fitzpatrick has to do is his job. So I don't think he has to be special for their schemes to work. So I'm going with the Bucs.
We'll have to see if they can get it done. Hey everyone, it's Luke again, jumping in here. This week, my predictions, I went 8 correct and 6 wrong. Pat also went 8 correct, 6 wrong. So the deciding factor on who was more right will be the Monday night game. Monday night game is being played tonight between the Steelers and Bucks. I took the Steelers, Pat took the Bucks. We'll see how it plays out and who ends up with a better prediction record after tonight. So that'll end our conversation on sports this week. We'll see how our predictions go next week. And again, these are just in our amateur opinions. We don't know. We're taking guesses based on what we like. Let's move in then to our main topic. This week, we are going to talk about the board gaming craze and the generation that has supposedly brought that back to the table, pun intended. Board games have really started to take off in the last couple of years, 2016 to now in 2018, and it's an interesting phenomenon because there are so many factors that would make you think that physical, tangible board games would go by the wayside while video games and other forms of entertainment, media consumption, would, and as we see them, they continue to grow. So you would think that board games would kind of fall off. Well, as it turns out, we've seen a recent increase and almost a revival in board games. And I'll link a couple articles, one to The Guardian and one to CNBC, about how millennials have revived the board game. And there are many classic board games or many key board games that are a factor in this, including probably the one that I would say was the most influential, Settlers of Catan. Catan is a game that's played by an immense amount of people, and it's a strategy game. It's a very interesting one. Takes some time to set up, takes some time to play. But these board games like Catan, like Risk, like just so many others, so many smaller versions of these games. And a lot of these games are like indie games. Developers are creating these with Kickstarter projects in a lot of cases, and they're becoming quite massive. A quick search on Amazon, you can find a ton of new board games that are not just Monopoly, the game of life, those what we think of as classic board games, but even those, I think, in many ways, are coming back into the mainstream. And so I thought it would be interesting to talk about that, maybe our experiences with board games, and what could be next and why this is happening. So I thought it would be interesting to start with board games that we play. So Pat, do you have any board games that you play? You and I are both kind of lumped in this millennial generation that is supposedly bringing back this revival of board games. Are there any board games that you play or you're interested in this topic?
Yeah, I think, for us, board games has become a primary form of entertainment when we have people over.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually tend to play Upper Deck,
Mm-hmm.
the card company, like trading cards.
Sure.
They needed to do something to stay relevant because baseball cards, football cards, that stuff's just not relevant anymore.
Yeah.
So what they've done is they've created some games that are actually a lot of fun. So we play a Buffy the Vampire Slayer game
Mm-hmm.
where, the cards, there's several different versions of cards. There's all the different characters are represented. So there's a whole bunch of different Buffy cards. There's a whole bunch of different Xander cards and Oz cards and Willow cards. And so all these main characters. Then they have these things that you call the Big Bad. So you have some big main enemy you're trying to defeat with these cards. And you actually all work together. So there may be 4 of us playing. We're actually all on the same team trying to win, beat the Big Bad. And there's certain ways that he can win. So it's actually a cooperative game. There are others that Upper Deck makes. So they make Marvel versions as well. So you can basically play out the Avengers movies with cards.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a ton of expansions for those Marvel ones. So we have a lot of fun playing it. We actually tried Dungeons and Dragons at one point, but it just takes a lot to really get into. It's like an investment. You have to really want to play it. So that one didn't work out for us. We didn't play it a ton. But yeah, those Upper Deck legendary card games are a lot of fun. I highly recommend them. They're pretty easy. Mm-hmm. And they're just interesting. They're fun.
Definitely, yeah, and that's something that for me, I've kind of noticed something similar with me. Whenever we go over to friends' houses, or even I've thought about it more when we don't have company come over too much, but if we do, I think board games are a great way to connect and to just kind of have some fun. For me, I love board games. I think this trend coming back is an amazing thing. I'm a naturally competitive person. I want to win at anything you put in front of me. I want to win at being the best podcast online. I'm always down for competition. I always want to compete. So for me, you put a game like Scattergories in front of me, which challenges me mentally by, you roll the die and now you have to think of all the things that start with that letter. That to me is a ton of fun. Cranium, where you have science questions, history questions, like current events questions, geography questions, pop culture questions, which I'm terrible at because I don't follow pop culture at all. Games like Trivial Pursuit, but even games like checkers and chess. Those are all games that it's like, look, you want to play me in checkers? All right, it's going down. Like, I want to do this. I'm interested in games like Catan. I'm interested in games. I played a ton of Risk when I was in college. When I was a resident assistant, we would play Risk a lot, me and the other RAs, and it was just a ton of fun. It would get dramatic. There would be, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that, and crazy, just a ton of fun. I haven't, like you said, I haven't gotten into games like D&D, but I'm interested by it. I have a friend, very close friend, Nick, who has gotten into D&D with his wife, and it seems like a really good experience. D&D seems like a bit much for me because it's such an ongoing thing. It's not like something like categories where you can play a set of games, or even like, you want to get Monopoly. Monopoly games last forever, but eventually they'll end. D&D is like an ongoing thing from what I understand. It sounds very interesting, but I'm a little intimidated by D&D just because it's so detailed, right? It requires such a time investment. I'm interested by board games that I can play in a couple hours. We played a board game. It stunned me. We went over to a friend's house and we played Legends of the Hidden Temple. So number one, the nostalgia factor was real. If you don't know what Legends of the Hidden Temple was, it was a show on Nickelodeon. It was a game show where, young kids were on teams and they had to go across challenges, and at the end there would be this talking head Olmec. All this sounds crazy if you don't know what I'm talking about, but please just Google search Legends of the Hidden Temple, because you will understand why the Silver Snakes were the best team and not the Orange Iguanas. But it was just so cool. And when I was a kid, I was like, man, I wanted to be on that show. I wanted to be on that show. I wanted to compete. It was like Global Guts or Double Dare, any of those. And there was a card game of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. The card game was a little tricky, a little interesting, but it was a ton of fun. And I was just like, how do people make this into a board game? And it was unique because what I saw happening was a group of people who, for the most part, had only interacted once or twice before. It was it was actually my wife's friend who invited us all over, but the rest of the people, we really had not interacted much. But we all we shared this common bond through this game, and it was just a ton of fun. And then we moved on to some other games, and it was a great experience. So for me, I don't know if anybody's saying like, oh, millennials are wrong here, or millennials are the bad. In fact, I think in this case, millennials are the good. But what I think we're seeing is with millennials, it's a let's sit down and interact, as opposed to you can still interact if you play a video game over, console, over the internet with a friend, but I don't know that you have the same feeling. I don't know that you have the same interaction as you do when the person is in the same room. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think the reason this is happening is because as society has changed to a more phone and internet and computer driven, less face-to-face personal interaction, this is just how over the last few years we've decided to solve that problem, because you have basic human needs for human interaction. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways we like to try is with our phones, or like you said, being in a party chat on Xbox, but it's just not the same.
Right.
And so you get the same enjoyment out of a board game, the same competitiveness, the same thought process at times of being strategic, or maybe it's fairly mindless and you can just do something somewhat distracting while hanging out. And I think that's just how the millennial generation is solving this problem of human interaction being minimized. Now we're starting to build it back up. And so you also see things like Gen Con, which mm-hmm. happens all over the country. There are various Gen Cons. But in Indianapolis this year alone, Gen Con reportedly had over 200,000 attendees. Mm-hmm. 200,000 people. Some came from out of town. Some came from just down the road. I mean, hotels were full. Everyone's dressed up in the streets. Every parking lot, every restaurant's full. I mean, this is a big deal for a lot of people, and sometimes you just go to play the games. Mm-hmm. Maybe you test out a new indie game like you talked about. It's just fun, and people aren't, I think there used to be a stigma around it that's come down because who cares? It's fun. And so you don't get upset or annoyed that someone's playing a game, or you don't make fun of them because they're playing a game, because deep down you kind of want to too. And so what's happened is people have started to more and more and more. These Gen Cons are also matched up with cult hits like The Walking Dead, or a lot of times Marvel people are there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you just tie all this stuff together and you start to realize this is a lot of fun. Maybe we should buy the game, play it at home, invite new friends, and who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting with Gen Con, like you're mentioning. So you have the face-to-face interaction of people engaging with board games. But also, if you just do a search on YouTube, if you search, and I've got it up on my screen right now, just search board games on YouTube, you're going to find channels that have thousands of views. One channel I'm looking at that's like a verified YouTube channel has over 1 million subscribers. And these people essentially just play the game and you watch them play the game. And that's an interesting thing too, because I think, some people with the rise of things like Twitch, I think some in the mainstream are saying like, well, why are people watching people play a game? Well, it's the same reason you're watching for sport. Why do you watch someone play a sport? Because you want to see someone win, okay, right? Or you want to see some kind of competition. Same thing applies to video games. It may not be necessarily the same type of competition. Same thing applies to board games. Someone's going to win. You want to know who. And if you don't necessarily have the time nor the resources to have a game, if I don't own the game, but I want to see someone play it so I can maybe kind of work out how it would work before I buy it, that's a huge benefit. And that's a way that technology is connecting with this old school style of gaming and kind of bridging the gap. It's an interesting thing that ties into even then our consumption of media. Again, like, and I'm not equating board games to physical sports like we talked about earlier with the NFL. They're very different things. But I feel like the concept, the holistic concept, is the same for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, you even see people playing it on Twitch.
Yeah.
So Twitch has, you can just play IRL in real life, right? And so you see people just streaming 8 or 10 of their friends over playing D&D.
Yeah.
And people enjoy it. It's funny. They maybe, like you said, they lack the resources to do it themselves. But maybe they don't have the money to go buy all the stuff that's kind of required to get this up and going.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have enough people that they interact with on a regular basis to make it happen on their own. So maybe they don't have 10 people that they could invite over and play a real lively game of Dungeons and Dragons. So you get this opportunity now to see other people do it. A little bit of jealousy maybe, but it gives you a reason to watch, something to enjoy. Not everyone likes watching football on Sundays.
No.
Some people like watching other people play D&D. It is what it is. And the technology that we have today has enabled that to, actually in a very easy sense. You set up a camera, you record it, upload it to YouTube. If you don't want to, you don't even have to do a lot of editing.
Yeah. Yeah, and you really can. You can just straight upload that to YouTube, the media outlet for people to watch. And if enough people get interested, then your YouTube channel could take off. And like I said, man, for a channel to have over 1 million subscribers and really be pretty much focused on board games, that's huge. I mean, that's a huge number of subscribers and people looking into that content. Very, very powerful thing. There's even a documentary, I noted it here, Going Cardboard is what it's called. And it talks about the rise of, and the re-rise of this of this board gaming phenomenon, right? It talks about the re-rise of it and the mainstreaming of it, where, maybe D&D before was, quote, nerdy or, quote, uncool. Well, it's mainstreaming, and it's not uncool. It's not nerdy. It's a way you can find enjoyment and entertainment. It's a media consumption. It's a way you entertain, okay? And to define something like this as like nerdy or off or weird is wrong. It's something that people are interested in, and I think more and more you're seeing it is reaching into mainstream. You can talk about that too from the video game perspective, because Ninja was just on the cover of ESPN the magazine. Whether you agree with Ninja being an athlete or not, the simple fact is people watch that guy play the game. They just do, and they're entertained by him. So finding this medium or revitalizing this medium, I think is great for not only the people who are on the outside and who are maybe saying like, oh, I don't know about gaming. I'd like to try board gaming, but I don't know. Maybe I could check it out. Maybe we could get a few friends over, try something. Not only those fringe players, but also, taking off those labels and saying, you know what, this is just a way to find entertainment. That's all this is. And it's a great way. It creates a ton of socialization. This was kind of like my last couple thoughts here was that one of the biggest things for me was I remembered when I was younger playing checkers. And now checkers is a very basic board game, right? But I remember playing checkers with my grandfather and my cousins at my grandfather's house and my grandmother all the time. And I would always, always, always want to beat my grandpa. Always. I always wanted to beat my grandpa in checkers. And he would never let us kids beat him. He would always it would always be, if we just got him, then we got him. But those were some great memories just sitting on the floor. And now this is pre, internet connectivity to Xbox Live and stuff. So, you're talking mid to late 90s. But you're sitting on the floor, you're engaging, you're playing checkers, you're face to face with someone, and it's just an interesting interaction. It's a positive interaction. You wouldn't believe how high stakes and dramatic checkers can be if you make it. King me, it gets crazy sometimes. But those were some really, for me, gaming brought some cherished memories back when I read some of this. I was like, oh yeah, man, I remember when I used to do that. For me also, I think you mentioned this earlier, it's the time away from screens. I'm guilty of this as much as anyone. I spend an exceptional amount of time in front of a screen. This is a way to socially interact with others in a positive manner that gets us off of the screen and gets us back in face-to-face interactions, which I think is a very positive thing. Board games are kind of bringing us back to this face-to-face interaction, which I think is awesome. I think board games also have a ton of replayability. They're great value. Going back to one of our previous podcasts, there is no DLC for board games. Now, there may be expansions, so if you play a card-based game like you, Pat, you were saying maybe the Buffy game might have some expansions, but you can play the base game with what you have. You don't need anything else. Games like Catan, games like Monopoly, they're all self-contained. Everything you need is there. You're not going to need anything else. And again, some do have expansions, but I think that's even still pretty rare. My one drawback, like you said, was that sometimes it can be hard to find enough players. I know, like I said, I'm not the most social person. Me and my wife, we hang out. A lot of times, it's just the two of us. But as I found out, I did a quick Google search, and one of the very first things that came up was a website, and it was the 7 best 2-player games you can play. 7 best 2-player board games right now that you can go out and buy. And there's 7 games there that now I'm interested in. I'm like, I could go get this. I could play this game with my wife. We could have more bonding there, and we could share in a really cool experience. And so even if you're concerned that you have, or maybe you don't have that necessary social circle, there can be ways to do that. And I think, like you said, you mentioned card games. I was saying games like Apples to Apples. That is just a game that brought me so many laughs. I think it's just so much. And I know I've been rambling, Pat, so I want to give you an opportunity to respond to what I just mentioned there.
No, you're good. I mean, it's a neat topic, like you said. It's something that you and your wife could do as a way to connect, as opposed to going out and spending more money.
Yeah.
So a lot of things that we could go do today just cost money.
Yeah.
Whether that be a movie and dinner or go-karts or mini golf, whatever the case may be, it all costs money.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are very aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
People today are doing better about avoiding irrational spending.
Mm-hmm.
And you buy a board game, you spend 20, 30, 40 bucks, but you do it one time.
Mm-hmm.
So the card games Kelly and I play, that Buffy game, the Marvel versions, those have rules for 2 players.
Yeah.
That make it that you can scale the game.
Yeah.
And so what we end up doing at times is just the 2 of us. We did this when we had our baby. And we just had time together, and he was asleep and didn't know what else to do, and we'd just play a game. We'd sit there and play Buffy, and it was, it's a ton of fun, something we still do occasionally. So I think the biggest issue, or not the issue, the biggest reason board games are coming back are all the things you've already mentioned or I have is, it's bringing back some element of face-to-face interaction.
Mm-hmm.
As we preach a society of tolerance, whether we're fully there or not, it's debatable. I'd say not. But, as closer we get, the less people care that that's what you're into, So a favorite saying of mine is to each their own. Yeah. So if there's something people like, there's something they're doing that they love, to each their own. They have every right to, they can do what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you see other people doing it and being popular at it and enjoying it, it takes away the power from the bully.
Mm-hmm.
So what is he going to say? You can't make fun of someone playing video games. Guys, Ninja makes probably over $1 million a month.
Yeah.
Per month. Which, if you don't think he's an athlete, great. I don't think I do either.
Yeah.
But he's making more than some professional real athletes.
You can't deny he's an entertainer, at least.
Right. And so there's just a lot of positive things going on. And for nothing else, people have to be happy that millennials are putting down their phones and they're happy to face-to-face interact, talk, and have fun in ways that's not drugs or video games.
Yeah, and we've talked about, there's just so many, in my mind, so many positive things that can come out of this. The face-to-face, bringing that back is huge to me. Not to say I'm like this old school, we need to get off our phones. Obviously, technology is just a huge benefit to us where we are, but it's just really interesting to see that this is coming back, to see that you have cafes, to see that you have, where they openly have games out and available because they want you to sit, they want you to play, and then they want you to come up and order another coffee. It's good business. It makes sense. You get people in, they have a coffee. Oh, they're going to play a game of Catan. They'll be here for, an hour or two, maybe 3. They'll come up and buy another coffee. Maybe they'll even buy a pastry or something. That is smart business. So when you see businesses doing that too, I think board games are having a positive impact on them.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, so board games are back, and I think it's a positive thing, and I think we both do. Overall, on the whole, for almost anybody who interacts with video games or comes into contact with video games, board games, or who comes into contact with them. So that should wrap up this episode. Hope you all enjoyed listening. Next week's topic is up in the air. We don't really have a topic right now. We'd love to hear from you in the comments, things you're interested in, things that you think that Pat and I should discuss. I know we talk a lot of sports. I know we've talked now another little phenomenon with board games. We've talked about leadership and things like that. We'd love to hear from you what you're interested in and what you want to hear us talk about. So make sure you engage and interact with us. I was very happy to see a couple other people joining the Discord this week. Please join our Discord. Check it out. Comment on the Facebook post, the Twitter. Comment on the YouTube where I'll post this. But we'd love to engage with our audience and talk to you more about what you would want to hear us discuss.
So the one thing I think we didn't mention today that I want to make sure we mention is number 13, Virginia Tech.
Oh, yeah.
Lost to unknown, unranked, never heard of, Old Dominion University.
Wait, the country band?
Yeah, like the country band.
Oh, the university. Gotcha.
It was an unbelievable sight. There's a video running on my screen right now. I mean, they actually did this with a backup quarterback. So Blake LaRussa came off the bench and threw 495 yards and 4 touchdowns for their first win ever over a Power 5 program. So this is a big deal, guys.
Shout outs to Old Dominion University and shout outs to you, Mr. LaRussa, you said?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
LaRussa. Shout outs to Mr. LaRussa for taking down.
He's in the Heisman hunt now. He has to be.
I mean, whoo! Goodness gracious. David taking down Goliath in college football today. I love it. And we also should acknowledge that Purdue beat a ranked opponent. All right, so next week's topic. Like we said, we don't really have one yet. Pat, any final thoughts for our listeners here?
No, thanks again for listening. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Twitter. You guys know the sites by now, I'm sure, but it's PNLIRL on Facebook and PLIRL1 on Twitter. So check us out. Interact with us, please. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about. We are here for you as much as anything. So talk to you soon.
All right, we will see you all on the next episode of PNL IRL.